Welcome to my YouTube channel. In this video, we will talk about Fedor Emelianenko is and will always be the greatest fighter ever. Fedor Emelianenko is back in action at Bellator Moscow on Saturday in what is expected to be his penultimate fight. Some 21 years after his pro debut in Russia, the last emperor is still going at 45. Emelianenko was fourth on the bill that night in 2000 but will go down alongside Khabib Nurmagomedov as the greatest fighter in Russia's history. But where does he stand in the overall picture of MMA? Emelianenko has 46 bouts to his name, 6 losses, and a no contest. His first defeat came in his fifth fight against Tsuyoshi Kosaka in 2000, but was considered by many as a wrongly ruled TKO and should have been a no contest due to an illegal elbow from Kosaka. The next loss came 10 years later as Emelianenko won 27 of 28 fights with a no contest against Antonio Rodrigo Nogueira in 2004. John McCarthy, who refereed Emelianenko on numerous occasions before becoming a broadcaster, discusses his quality and whether he is the greatest MMA heavyweight. Who is in the GO8 conversation? Modern fight fans will argue former UFC champions Cain Velasquez or Stipe Miocic deserve the title. There are also Pride legends Mirko Cro Cop and Nogueira to consider. McCarthy, however, thinks Miocic and Velasquez are the two closest to Emelianenko. I think you got to put Stipe Miocic in there. He's been a good champion and long-standing champion at times, he told BBC Sport. Cain Velasquez was special insofar as he could weaponize the cardiovascular. He could push you at a pace that breaks you. He would be up there. Randy Couture is another one up there. What makes Fedor so unique? Emelianenko was unstoppable for a decade, beating legends Cro Cop, Nogueira, Mark Coleman, and Andrei Arlovsky along the way. Smaller than most heavyweights, but with explosive hands. He will go out on his shield, or he will put you out on yours, McCarthy added. What makes him unique is how fast he was. Heavyweights are a different breed. Anyone at any time. If they touch the right spot, you're out. But to maintain a pace, it's like an RPM on your car. He pushes that RPM on a heavyweight to a point where they start to break down over how fast they have to move to try to stay with him. When he explodes, he unleashes. That's one of the great things about the way he fights. Then you look at the longevity. He's phenomenal. He's been incredible for the sport in the fact he's not a talker. He doesn't put down his opponents. He's a class act. No heavyweight gets close to Fedor. It's easy to see why Emelianenko is a fan favorite. Of his 39 wins, only 9 have gone to the scorecards. At his peak, he was as likely to knock an opponent out as to submit them. He was Pride's heavyweight champion and Ring's openweight champion before he dipped his toes in the US scene with Strikeforce and Bellator. There is no doubt Fedor is the greatest heavyweight of all time, McCarthy said. Fedor was basically 32-0 when he finally lost to Fabricio Werdum. You're going to lose somewhere along the way. You make mistakes in this sport. But it was the lineage of everyone he fought in Pride and everything he did, how long he did, consecutively getting wins all time. You look at what he's done, there's no heavyweight that has been as long-lasting as far as consecutive wins in a row. He's fought for a long time too. There's a couple of guys who have done that, but not in the winning fashion as Fedor. There are some great heavyweights out there. Velasquez is a great heavyweight. Miocic is a great heavyweight, but they couldn't do it and maintain wins the way Fedor did. If we're talking about heavyweights, there's no doubt. UFC did everything to get him. There are plenty of incredible fighters who have never fought in the UFC, such as European destroyer Man Khalidov, Japanese star Shinya Aoki, Bellator's own Douglas Lima, and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu legend Rickson Gracie. Dana White has spoken at length about how the UFC failed in multiple attempts to lure Emelianenko to the octagon. An agreement could never be reached, says Emelianenko, and McCarthy thinks he is the best fighter to never sign with the UFC. He would be the one because he's the one they really wanted, McCarthy said. The UFC did everything they could to sign him. They did not match up together. It never happened, and it's a shame because they wanted to put him in against Brock Lesnar right away. If they had put Fedor against Brock, that would not have been a good fight for Brock. He wouldn't have been able to take him down. If you look at the history of Fedor against wrestlers, he did very well. When was Emelianenko at his peak? Emelianenko's run in Strikeforce was a gut punch to his legion of fans, as 3 successive defeats ended his 10-year unbeaten run. Fabricio Werdum was the first to stop that streak, and he was then beaten by Antonio Silva and Dan Henderson. It was not the Emelianenko takeover of America his supporters expected, and McCarthy thinks his best version was in the mid-2000s when he was ruling Pride in Japan as a 28-year-old. I think it's the Pride days, and when he fought Mirko Cro Cop in 2005, McCarthy said, "Mirko was just in a zone of destroying people. When they put Fedor against him, Mirko was at an all-time high in his career." Fedor came up with a blueprint on how to beat Cro Cop. People used that same blueprint on Cro Cop again and again. Fedor walked him down and showed how to beat him. It was a great fight and one of the greatest performances in heavyweight history. Who is the MMA GOAT? While McCarthy believes Emelianenko is the heavyweight GOAT, he expects the Russian to be in the conversation of the greatest MMA fighter too. If you're looking at today's fighters as a whole, the GOAT fighters are John Jones, Khabib Nurmagomedov, Georges St-Pierre, and then Fedor would be right up there, he added. Especially in his prime, he was every bit what John Jones was in his prime, Anderson Silva being another one. Fedor is in the top 5. Why Fedor Emelianenko is the greatest heavyweight of all time? Our discussion begins with what Emelianenko brought to MMA that made him so special to watch and so invincible from the start. Despite being undersized for a heavyweight, measured at 6 feet and 230 pounds, Emelianenko's all-around game made him almost impossible for opponents to figure out. From his 40 wins, 16 have come by way of knockout, 15 by submission, and only a mere 9 went to the judges' scorecard. Not only did this make all his fights a must-watch, but it meant that he could go toe-to-toe, strike for strike with anyone. In a fight not many expected him to win, Emelianenko would face Antonio Nogueira, who was deemed invincible thanks to his elite jiu-jitsu for a heavyweight. Emelianenko would find himself in Nogueira's guard quickly. This would often signal the beginning of the end for most, but Emelianenko, as calm and poised as ever, utilized ground and pound to pummel Nogueira for 20 minutes and win the Pride heavyweight title. When he faced perhaps the greatest kickboxer of all time in Mirko Cro Cop, Emelianenko mixed takedowns with a counter-punching strategy to dismantle the Croatian. Even when he was up against much bigger opponents, such as the 6'11" Semi Schilt or the 7'2" Hongmin Choi, Emelianenko always found a way to bring his opponents down and eventually out. Being a master of sports in both judo and sambo definitely helps, but it does not give an answer for how powerful he hit, how poised he was as a fighter, or how capable he was on the ground, using submissions or ground and pound to devastating effects. Whenever Emelianenko fought, it was impossible to predict the outcome, although the result was always the same. Another victory for Emelianenko. If excitement or being a master practitioner of MMA isn't enough of a reason, let's take the statistical approach as to why Emelianenko is the greatest of all time. He was undefeated for 10 years, a total of 28 fights in the hardest division to remain unbeaten. In a weight class where one punch can end anyone's night, Emelianenko somehow managed to reign supreme over all other heavyweights, and boy did he fight some of the best to ever do it. Make sure to watch the full video. Let me know in the comment section below. Before you go, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.